Hello and welcome to LandTalk, the program that tells the stories of people on the land. My name is Matt Sykes. Have you ever dreamed of making a living from bathing? Well, that's exactly what today's host, Charles Davidson, has done. He is the visionary behind Peninsula Hot Springs, a bathing landscape at Rye on the Mornington Peninsula, which has been inspired by spa cultures from all around the world. Charles, thanks for having us.
Pleasure, you're welcome.
Can you describe the moment when you fell in love with hot springs?
It was in Japan in 1992, and I was taken to a town for the weekend, a town called Kusatsu, which was about 2 hours from Tokyo, and it was in winter. I was taken to these outdoor pools, and there was snow all around and the trees and a big valley, and I laying back in the pools looking up at the sky and looking up at the snow, and there's just this sense of total relaxation, and I could only think of, why haven't we got this in Australia? It's such the most relaxing thing I'd ever done, and I just thought, Australians love relaxing, why don't we have it? So from that time onwards, I started the dream of bringing people into that experience and bringing that experience to Australia.
When did you discover that there was geothermal water on the Mornington Peninsula?
It was actually 5 years later, so it was in 1997. 5 years after I'd had that first experience in Japan, and it was actually in Tokyo. I was at that stage working at the Australian Embassy, and I had a conversation with the head of the Victorian State Office, a man called Kevin Knowles, after work one day, and he said, "What would you like to do with your life?" And I said, "I'd love to do hot springs." And he said, "You know, I think there's hot water on the Mornington Peninsula."
So you've drilled down to access the water, and the story has begun with the development of the Spa Dreaming Centre. That has a special connection with Aboriginal culture. Can you describe that?
The connection that we had with Aboriginal culture was really about the connection with the land and the environment, and the Aboriginal people are of the land by their very nature, that they are people of the land. And the experience we wanted to provide to customers was an experience of being at one with the environment and being relaxing in nature, and getting away from their busy worlds and busy lives and being at one with the environment. So we thought there was a very natural connection between the Aboriginal philosophies and ideas of being at one with the land and the experience that we were trying to offer.
With business partners, your brother Richard and Norm, you've gone on to create the public bathing area, which is a bathing landscape inspired by your travels and experiences with spa cultures all around the world. Why is the cultural dimension of Peninsula Hot Springs so important?
Look, cultural connections at the hot springs has been, from its very inception, lying in a hot pool in Japan. I used to work in international trade, which I deliberately moved into because I wanted to be involved in cross cultures and the introduction of understanding through international understanding through whatever we were doing. So whether it was international understanding through trade or international understanding through hot springs, which is one of our missions at Peninsula Hot Springs. You know, Australian life is very multicultural, and so wanting to have a product that was relevant. Bathing is something that every culture does. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, where you come from, people will bathe. They bathe as a child and they bathe all their lives.
What is the story behind the Turkish hammam?
Look, the very first time I ever had an experience in a Turkish bath was when I was 18 in Istanbul, and then I went back to Istanbul as on a conference, the Global Spa Summit, and I'd always wanted to introduce the Turkish baths because it was a cultural connection. In fact, in 1998 I went to travel as an international research, and I went to Russia, and then I went to Yemen and Egypt as some of the early studies. And in Yemen I went to the capital Sana'a, and then went on a hot spring tour around Yemen, which they'd never had a request for a hot spring tour around Yemen before, but I had a driver and they took me around. And one of the hot springs that I went to, one of the spa centres I went to, was 2,200 years old and still operating. So that was very inspirational. In fact, the owners of that hot spring said that we have not operated this for very long, their family has only operated for the last 100 years. So it really put into the dimension the longevity of this, of bathing.
Yes.
And how it's a business that's very sustainable, and it can keep operating for a very long period of time because there's an ongoing need and ongoing demand for it.
Another one of the healing experiences is the reflexology walk. What was that inspired by?
Look, the reflexology walk was inspired by trips in Japan. So I saw it in a number of places in Japan. And a reflexology walk is basically having stones inlaid at the bottom of a pool, and there's different textures of stone. So as you're walking through it, the base of your feet are getting, in a sense, a massage from the stone. And the reflexology is all about pressure points. So it's not actually specifically like a reflexology treatment, which will focus on a single point, but it does massage the bottom of your feet. And in some of the stones, there's it actually hurts as you're walking onto it, and it really does give you quite a lot of pressure. And so it's inspired from Japan.
You went to India recently, earlier on in the year, and you came across Ayurvedic treatments. How has that found its way into the hot springs?
Look, the first manifestations, I was in India in February this year, and visited different hot springs, and then also went to some yoga centres and an Ayurvedic centre as an experience. And at one of the hot springs, they have a bowl, which is very much like the bowl they use in Shirodhara. Now, the Shirodhara means sort of water healing, but it's basically a bowl that's concave, I think it is, and it's got a little hole at the bottom, and oil drips out, and it drips on your third eye, on your third eye, which is just your forehead, and that's meant as a form of relaxation, and you end up having a massage with it. But I saw one of these in a temple at a hot spring, and in fact the man that was taking me around, he asked me to take this bowl and go out to the hot springs and fill it up, and then put it on top of a deity which is in this temple. And so I used in my mind, I thought, well, it'd be very nice if you could do that as a self-guided treatment, where people can fill up the bowls and have it at the side of the pool, and actually do it just like the Shirodhara, to have their own water meditation. So I ended up running around India, finding some metal shops, and got some of these bowls, and I brought them back in February, and we've now got them in the pool, so people can do their self-guided water meditation.
Charles is a classic example of how our lives in the modern world have become increasingly global and local at the same time. His passion for hot springs has taken him to 22 different countries around the world, but is here on the Mornington Peninsula, a region with which his family has been connected for 7 generations, that it all comes together. Peninsula Hot Springs is a space to explore that identity, a space to explore ourselves, and a space to explore all around us. My name is Matt Sykes, and this has been LandTalk. Charles has 4 kids with his beautiful wife Yuki, and each of them has been born at different stages of his hot springs journey. At the moment, we're joined with Kai, his eldest son. Kai, how have hot springs shaped your view of the world?
Well, last year I went to Japan, and when I went there and Dad took us to the hot springs, I realized that when I walked in, everyone was naked, so I was a little surprised, but that's just the culture of it. It's natural for everyone. But another example is in New Zealand. Well, I went there just last year as well, actually, and it was different also because there was like a hot spring river, and it was very hot on the middle and then really cold on the outsides. So I was also a little surprised by that. I realized that around the world, it's not just one big culture and everyone does the same thing. It's more like lots of different countries are split into different categories, I guess, and they're all different cultures and do different things in everything they do. And